once a government is committed to the principle of silencing the voice of opposition, it has only one way to go, and that is down the path of increasing repressive measures until it becomes a source of terror to all its citizens and creates a country where everyone lives in fear. Harry S. Truman.
We shall fight on the beaches, we shall fight on the landing grounds.
Thank you for joining us. You are listening to A Radio, and this is the Morning Moment. We're on weekdays, 11:45 Eastern. Follow us on Spreaker.com and click on the like button. This piece I came across purely by accident. However, consider this. It's from a source that is primarily funded by the Canadian citizen. It is not a private organisation. Many people have said repeatedly over the years how biased this organisation is, and it is well known that that is a fact in Canada, and quote nothing but the Liberal viewpoint. If you have ever had any doubts about the veracity of that statement, I give you this piece from the CBC.ca. That's the Canadian Broadcasting Company. Now the links will be on my site. The item was published April 16th. This document on a government-funded site, which is in fact not government-funded as the government likes you to think. Certainly the Liberal Communists in Canada believe it's government money. Actually, they don't have any money. It's Canadian citizens' money. And it's my belief, and I think that many citizens also probably believe this, that this organisation, beyond all others, should just report the news and not try and shape it. I'm going to read you this piece. These are not my words or sentiments in any way. Here's the piece. As I say, the links will be on my site, and there are also comments there. I urge you to read those comments. And for those of you who aren't able to see the site, I don't know whether it works outside of Canada. A bit like some of the American sites that don't seem to want to let foreigners in. Let us know, send us an email, and we'll send you screen grabs if necessary, so you can see the garbage that they produce. The sick mentality of these lefties, mainly in the big urban combines, I have to say. In the real parts of Canada, where people actually do things for a living, rather than move pieces of paper around on a desk, or work for the federal or provincial governments, the views seem to be somewhat different. Here's the piece, and it's from a Neil MacDonald. It's entitled, "Why is Conservative Politics Such a Natural Home for White Supremacists?" He heads it like this. Trump proudly calls himself a nationalist, without specifying what kind. Use that word, he tells his angry, overwhelmingly white base. Use that word, and that's from Stephanie Keith, Reuters. The problem is that's a lie for a start, because it's not overwhelmingly white. It's overwhelmingly American. The piece goes on. Interestingly, how the term white nationalism has somehow become to supplant the more honest phrase white supremacy, both here and in the United States. Everyone seems to be using it now. It will be an election campaign topic in our general election this fall, and the American one late next year. And let's be clear, it's a euphemism. The word nationalism to most people has a virtuous whiff. Historically, it has been conflated with the terms like patriotism, loyalty, and solidarity with one's civic tribe. I don't really know what that means, but we'll carry on. When the word is modified with a racial adjective, though, any distinction dissolves. A white nationalist stands with white people, advocating for white prerogatives and the protection of white governance. A white nationalist would claim that flying the Confederate flag on the state building is an expression of cultural history rather than a racial sentiment. A white nationalist would claim, as the television host Megyn Kelly once did on Fox News, that Jesus was white, and by implication, God too. Jesus would have been dark-skinned Sephardic Jew, not a blue-eyed bland-faced fellow with wavy brown locks. I don't know what that's supposed to mean, but anyway. And before someone raises it, because people do, there is no comparison between white nationalism and assertions of solidarity or even superiority by minorities. They haven't been in charge for centuries on this continent. White nationalism is about keeping power white. Yes, there are minority groups represented among Justin Trudeau's ministers, but they were given jobs by a white guy. What the hell is that? Supremacy by any other name. White nationalism is in fact white supremacy. It's understandable that white supremacists would want to be called nationalists, but that doesn't make them any less supremacist, which is why presumably conservative politicians here and in the US are expressing such anger at having the label applied to them. They accuse their liberal opponents of planning attack ads and messaging portraying them as racist, or at the very least opportunists chasing racist votes. I have to interject here. I got to do this because it's just bugging the hell out of me. The KKK, which came from the Deep South, weren't Republicans. They were Democrats. The segregists in the South weren't Republicans. They were Democrats who like to call themselves liberals. I can't believe how these liberal communists twist history. Anyway, the article continues. I'm sorry to interject there. They are right about that. Prime Minister Trudeau and his ministers are making a concerted effort to bind Conservative leader Andrew Scheer to the so-called alt-right, another euphemism in this country, and the Democrats, newly in control in the House of Representatives, have convened hearings on the threat of white nationalism. The fact that Republicans obsequiously excuse President Trump's boorish rantings, of course, make it easy for Democrats. Trump has declared that white extremism isn't a threat, despite ample evidence to the contrary. Carlos Berea, Reuters. No comment. He eagerly hits Twitter every time an act of extremism is committed by a Muslim or brown-skinned immigrant, but takes comparatively incidental notice when hate crimes are carried out by white Christians or non-Muslims, something that has been happening far more often in recent years. I think he made a few comments about the attack in Pennsylvania at the synagogue, and he certainly made a few comments in the last couple of days about an attack at another synagogue. But, hey, what do I know? When a man arrested for the mosque murders in Christchurch left a manifesto praising Trump as a symbol of renewed white identity and common purpose, Trump, who has said he doesn't believe his rhetoric inspires violent white extremists, further declared that white extremism isn't really a threat, despite ample evidence to the contrary, including the assessment of his own Justice Department. Where's the ample evidence? Where's the ample evidence? Who went down a street in London and chopped off the head of a soldier? Who blew up a bus in London? Who ran a vehicle into a crowded bridge in London? Was it white extremists? No. Reporting the facts isn't racist. They're facts. These lefties need to be called out for what they are. They're anti-free speech. If free speech hurts, too bad. That's free speech. You have to report the facts and let the chips fall where they may. So President Trump accused of racism for trying to send condolences to a synagogue. Is that racism? I think it's racist, the actions that the New Zealand Prime Minister took, taking away the rights of New Zealanders to have guns. I think that's racist because that's reacting on one event which had nothing to do with that attack. Nothing. It's the same in the UK. London is not a safe place. Why? Because of the Mayor of London, who is a racist. He's anti-white. He puts obstacles in the way of the police every single day. He shuts down police stations every single day. People can't say anything or do anything because if they do, they're racist. And people are being attacked in broad daylight with knives. Are they going to ban knives? How are you going to ban a knife? How are you going to ban a knife? In Britain, if you are caught with a tire iron in your car, you could be accused of having a dangerous weapon. So, changing a flat on the side of the road, the police in theory could stop you and arrest you for having a dangerous weapon. That's how crazy these lefties are. That is how crazy these lefties are. The article continues. Not that I want to read it. This, of course, is also the president who said there were some very fine people, here we go, in the white mob carrying torches in Virginia a few years ago. He proudly calls himself a white nationalist without specifying what kind. Use the word, he tells his angry, overwhelming white base. Use the word. Hate hoax. Candace Owens, a conservative American activist, cited by the New Zealand murderer as a great influence, told Congress recently that the whole white nationalism thing is nothing more than a Democrat re-election strategy. Correct. She also once said Hitler wasn't such a bad fellow, at least until he started trying to conquer the world. I wonder if she actually said that. Texas Representative Louis Gohmert, a Trump fanboy, that's a very snarky comment, isn't it, was suspicious when YouTube, which was live streaming the hearing, took down hundreds of racist, anti-Semitic comments, musing about whether it was just more Democratic hate hoax. Representative Steve King, who has rhetorically asked what's wrong with being white and a nationalist, or white supremacist, remains a proud Republican. Actually, that's not quite what he said, but never mind. And even if extremists do applaud Trump, that's President Trump to you, you ignorant SOB, ask his supporters what can he do about it. Trudeau road tests campaign attacks that lump Shia and Doug Ford with alt-right. Facebook bans Faith Goldie and dangerous alt-right groups. Never do they ask or attempt to answer the obvious question. Why is it that white supremacists from the neo-Nazis who threw celebratory salutes the night of his election to the former KKK leader David Duke, to the Charlottesville torchbearers, to the New Zealand murderer or Cesar Savoc, the Florida bodybuilder who sent explosives to Trump's critics in 2018, gravitate right rather than left? Why is conservative politics such a natural home for white supremacists? Canadian conservatives might ask themselves the same question, rather than whining about how unfair it is that liberals are associating Andrew Scheer with Faith Goldie, an obvious white supremacist, that's your opinion, a label she rejects, who proudly advocates for European identity and white identity, and who has contributed to a neo-Nazi podcast. They could instead reflect on why, in heaven's name, he appeared on her online diatribe show 2 years ago. They're so desperate to find anything. How about SNC Lavalin? How about that? Anyway, Scheer hired his campaign manager from former director of the far-right shock talk site Rebel Media, Hadal Ibrahim. CBC made that comment. Well, I'm going to make a comment there. The Rebel Media is not far-right. It just happens to tell what's going on. If it appears to be far-right, that's the truth. And what you consider to be far-right is probably in the middle of the road. The article continues. Or why Scheer chooses to address the United We Roll Yellow Vest campaign in Ottawa this year, where yes, Faith Goldie also spoke to the crowd, as did former Conservative MP Maxime Bernier. Well, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with speaking to a crowd who don't want the carbon dioxide tax? That's called free speech. What's your name again? What's this guy's name? Neil MacDonald. Well, Neil MacDonald, that's called free speech. Anybody can address anybody. Take a look at the charter, Mr. MacDonald. The article continues. Or why he would hire his campaign manager, a former director of a far-right shock talk site, Rebel Media, where Faith Goldie worked until she became too much for even them. Well, that's your opinion. Representative Steve King, incidentally, endorsed Goldie's recent bid for Mayor of Toronto. Somehow, she still lost. So you're accusing her of being far-right, yet the person who won wasn't quite far right enough. Unbelievable. Conservatives in Canada might also ponder why there have been so many racist, anti-gay, bozo eruptions in Alberta's United Conservative Party, rather than in, say, the governing NDP. Oh, really? Is that right? Or why a small C Conservative senator's racist posts remain online. Yes, Lynn Bayek was expelled from the Conservative caucus for posts which were denounced by Scheer, that's Andrew Scheer. But how does the party attract characters like her in the first place? Or why the Conservative government in Quebec, a place where a giant illuminated cross overlooks the province's biggest city, an expression of cultural history, of course, would be willing to suspend the Constitution to pass a law clearly aimed at keeping religious Sikhs and Muslims out of the public service. If you say so, I don't know. I don't follow Quebec politics. It doesn't interest me. It's another country as far as I'm concerned. Ooh, was that racist? No, it was a comment. It was a free speech comment on the fact that I don't believe Quebec should be in Canada. There. Maybe you want to make a comment about that. Maybe that was racist. These people are pathetic. The answer is that somehow over the decades that have passed since the 60s, and as North American cities have become much less white, it has become more okay in some circles to be a white supremacist. Actually, it's become, what was it you put there? Become much less white. Well, in Canada, that's caused by Trudeau importing large groups of people with a low education bias over Europeans. And in the United States, you can blame Ted Kennedy for that, who actually blocked Brits in particular from being able to emigrate to the United States. But, let's not let facts get in the way, shall we? Would be wrong, wouldn't it? Changing the label to white nationalist obscures nothing. Abraham Lincoln, according to legend, used to ask his cabinet members how many legs a dog has. If you consider a tail to be a leg, his answer, 4. Because calling a tail a leg doesn't make it a leg. Calling somebody a racist doesn't make him a racist. This is classic Saul Alinsky. Classic Saul Alinsky. Trudeau is a communist. This guy is pretty close to a communist as far as I'm concerned. He talks like a communist. He doesn't like the fact that Conservatives are growing in popularity in Canada. He doesn't like the fact that Trudeau has lost his popularity in Canada. He doesn't like the fact that President Trump is just that, President Trump. It is ignorant and arrogant when they address the leader of the free world as Trump. He's President Trump to you, or Sir. I just get so angry with these little left-wing nerds in Ottawa and Toronto, and perhaps even in Quebec. I don't know. I don't follow them. These people need to be put in their place, in their little box, inside CBC, down the corridor behind the toilet, because that's all they're good for. In my opinion, and many other Canadians, CBC needs to be sold off. We need to get it out of the public domain and into the private domain, where these sort of comments would be tossed into the garbage where they belong. This guy obviously thinks he's a journalist. He's not a journalist. He's an opinion maker. I'm not a journalist. I have my opinion, but I don't have the platform that he does in Canada. You can find more at aradio.wordpress.com, where you can find links to us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Gab and email. We're also on Spotify. Just go to the podcast section and type Canadian Politics with a twist and you'll find us. We are continuing to reach out to you, so please pass on these links. Please click on the follow button on Spreaker.com. You can listen to all our morning moments at Spreaker.com under A Radio. That's EHRADIO, A Radio, and click on the like button. And you can hear a review of our morning moments on WHBJ-DB, News Talk Radio on Spreaker.com. Join us and many others. And you can find all our podcasts and morning moments at aradio.wordpress.com. Click on the Morning Moments tab.